I will implement a bold series of reforms to completely eliminate dependence on China in all critical areas. We will revoke China's most favored nation trade status and adopt a 4-year plan to phase out all Chinese imports of essential goods, everything from electronics to steel to pharmaceuticals. We will also adopt new rules to stop U.S. companies from pouring investments into China and to stop China from buying up America, allowing all of those investments that clearly serve American interests. We're not going to allow bad things to happen to our country anymore, and we will eliminate federal contracts for any company that outsources to China.
What is he even talking about? I mean, the guy is bonkers. He doesn't know anything about international trade, clearly. Anyone who does know anything about international trade, listening to that Donald Trump diatribe, will probably be listening with their head in their hands, like Dr. Fauci did when Trump was trying to push hydroxychloroquine on the population. I mean, we need experts to be running state departments, doing international trade, looking after the US interests, not Donald Trump, and not Stephen Miller and these speechwriters, the advisors that are so xenophobic and so racist that they think that by claiming that the US is a sacrosanct place where there'll be total segregation from trading partners, and they think that in some way that is attractive to the greater population. The reality is, if you don't trade with China, the cost of all goods will go up significantly. The cheap TV, you can buy a 55-inch television now for, $250? Do you honestly think that if that was made in the US in its entirety without any parts coming from China, that it would be as cheap as that? It would be at least $1,000. People want cheap Chinese goods. That is the market that has been created in the United States, that kind of throwaway attitude. And you're not going to get that to change. And so Donald Trump is trying to crash the US economy by claiming that China in some way is an unsavory trading partner. Yes, they are certainly unsavory when it comes to their human rights atrocities and abuses, which of course we are trying to deal with in a diplomatic fashion. But that's a separate department. You can't just claim that China is the enemy and then think you're preventing the world from experiencing World War III. You're more likely to maintain peace around the world if you trade with nuclear nations such as China. And let's just look at the numbers here, because Donald Trump talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk, because under Donald Trump, during his presidency, or certainly the end of his presidency, US exports to China were $151 billion. That was a 21.4% increase on the year before. Imports from China at the end of Donald Trump's presidency was $506 billion. That was a 16.5% increase on the year before. The point is that Trump is responsible for an increase in trade with China. That's what he does. And yet behind that is this kind of xenophobic, kind of racist undertone, claiming that China is someone who is trying to steal the US economy from under the feet of hardworking Americans. And it's simply not the case. You can have both. You can have all of these things can coexist. China was the United States' third largest trade partner at the end of Donald Trump's presidency. 8.6% of total U.S. exports of $1.8 trillion to the whole world were exported to China. We need them. People who work in factories, who make stuff and sell stuff, they want to sell it to China. China buys, and we buy from China. And, it's almost as if you're trying to kind of be an anti-capitalist. Maybe that's what Trump wants ultimately. He's a socialist at heart, and he just wants to bring everything home and have the government look after everybody. Is that what it is? Because it's these double standards that confuse me so much. And I genuinely want people to understand, and I think most people do, The only person who doesn't understand is the former president, who has never understood international trade. He certainly never understood international diplomacy. You know, his friends were dictators. Vladimir Putin was his buddy. Kim Jong-un was his buddy. He didn't get on with the likes of Angela Merkel of Germany or these kind of peacetime European partners. He just couldn't connect with those. The people he liked were these autocrats. And so that's why this double standard from the disgraced former president is so frustrating to hear, because to anybody who understands or at least takes a bit of an interest in how the global economy works and the capitalist system and international trade, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, he's trying to claim that, he wants to protect the United States. Well, China needs us as much as we need them. This is the relationship that keeps us safe, and it keeps people, enables people to put food on the table. It keeps people in work. So next time you hear Donald Trump claim that China is, because of its, because he's blaming them for COVID, or because it makes him look like a strong man, to be tough on China, just remember that if he did everything that he said he was going to do in that speech, which he absolutely will not. It's all posturing. This is all electioneering. It has no bearing on reality. But if he did do everything that he claims in that speech, he would pretty much crash the US economy. And the knock-on effect for countries around the world who also trade goods, you would see a worldwide recession. That is what Donald Trump is suggesting. And yet, his ties and his MAGA hats, they're all made in China. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5-Minute News podcast, on Sundays on the Weekend Show with MeidasTouch. And for more videos, subscribe to my Patreon at patreon.com/5Minute News.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.